Hello, my name is Rich Howard, owner of Architectural Builder Supply, and this video is to bring you a closer look at the Cal Royal. This is their part number, BB454, US 26D NRP. This is a hinge. This is a fairly common hinge, not the most common hinge, but fairly common in that it is a 4-inch tall, pardon me, a 4.5-inch tall and 4-inch wide hinge. Okay, so a little bit narrower than it is wide. It's a very smart way to use a hinge for a couple of reasons that we're going to get into. So let's start with dissecting the part number. What we have here is a BB ball bearing. Okay, the BB454, the 454 tells us that it's 4.5 by 4. But it also tells us other things. It certainly tells us that this is a full mortise hinge. And you can see from the swag on the hinge leaves here that they're meant to be, that swag right there, the bend in the hinge leaf, that they're meant to be mortised flush to the edge of the door and frame when the leaves are brought parallel. Okay, it's a full mortise hinge. It's also a 5-knuckle hinge. Okay. It's also standard weight, and on this hinge it should measure 134 thousandths. And the caliper tells me that it's 128 thousandths. That's a little unusual, 128 thousandths. A little unusual. A hinge should be 131 thousandths. Not that, you know, let's be frank. Will 6 thousandths of an inch matter? No, but it should be 134 thousandths is what it ought to be. I'm not sure what their tolerance is on that, but that leaf is a bit thin. Not that there's going to be anything that will cause a problem necessarily, but that's what it's supposed to be. This is, let's move on to the size, the 454. The first dimension on a hinge is the height. That means that this hinge is 4.5 inch tall. It means that the hinge is 4-inch wide. You're probably familiar with a 4x4 or a 4.5, 4.5. Yeah, those are for sure the most common type sizes where they're square. But there are many times when a narrower hinge than tall is really the best, is really the appropriate hinge, the most appropriate hinge to use. It would be considered best practice. Let's take a look at our screen here and discuss why that might be the case. Now, why that might be the case would be when you have a scenario where you have a frame. Single rabbet, double rabbet, just doesn't matter. Okay. Your hinge barrel is over here. Your hinge leaves come here. Okay. Your vertical axis of pivoting, that plus sign. You have your door. Okay. In a situation where your frame wraps the wall, okay, a couple of studs. There is no reason to use a 4.5 by 4.5. That's projecting hardware unnecessarily. It's only a 1/4 inch, but it really does matter, in fact. Best practice would be to bring that hinge and the vertical axis of pivoting closer, tighter to the face of the door in the frame for a couple of reasons. Less projecting hardware as you're headed down the hallway. Otherwise, that barrel is going to be sticking out a little bit further. Okay. Also, it makes the hinge more efficient when you're carrying the load and you bring the vertical axis of pivoting closer to the center of the thickness of the door, at least closer. It can do its job more efficiently. Very much appropriate when you're dealing with heavier doors. But when you're dealing with a standard weight door and you're dealing with a door that could be cycled millions of times realistically over its life, yes, every little way in which it's going to be applied, the hinge, is contributory to the long-term health of the opening. So in this scenario, a 4-inch would be a great option, and you will very often see in aluminum storefront doors where that frame can very generally, butt up to the wall. 4-inch is very common in aluminum storefront. Now here's where you kind of need to think about, the width of the hinge a little bit, in the sense that if, 4.5, that's probably going to work, and probably going to work all the time. We've just talked about why a 4-inch might be a better option. Here's why a 4-inch may not be a better option. You have 8-inch CMU. You've got a 5 3/4 frame that's been bolted through, right? And now your client is telling you, listen, I have to have that door go to 180 degrees. Okay? Now you've got to bring that hinge barrel out here to get that to the point where your vertical axis of pivoting will give you the clearance dimension here, and then the clearance dimension here, so that you can swing that door open. Okay? So thinking about the width of your hinge is really important. Okay? How wide that hinge is going to be needs to be thought out. You can really get away with 4.5 in almost all instances. This client ordered 4.5 by 4. They could be just simply matching existing, or they might be aware of the fact that it's better to bring that in. So those would be the two instances where you need to, a couple of instances where you should think to yourself, okay, what do I want to do here in terms of the width? When you have a 4.5 by 4 or 4.5, that's great, but you can also do a 4.5 by 6, which might be what this sort of wide throw, and that's what they call that hinge, application would call for. Now, back to the page in the website where we're looking at it, we have a link to the document called Template, and that will show us all of the important dimensional properties of our hinge, namely where the holes are located. This is a template, but the location of these holes is called the template pattern, and the template pattern is a standardized pattern by which all manufacturers, if they're selling you a template hinge and it's 4.5 inch tall, they will always observe all of these dimensions, okay, without deviation. If it's a template hinge that you need, like for a hollow metal frame, it will observe these locations, okay? Now, let's take a closer look at our hinge and the extended description on the camera. Now, this hinge in particular has a feature to it. It's non-removable pin. That set screw that's there, that you will notice from the outside of the hinge. You can see it there, but what's important is you won't be able to fit your Allen wrench in behind here to get that set screw out. Okay? What's happening here is in the barrel of this hinge, if I were to loosen the set screw and then drive the pin out, there will be a groove cut in that hinge, that pin. When you tighten the set screw down, the set screw goes into the groove and all but prevents you from driving that pin out. I've tried. Can you do it? You can. It's possible, but you're going to destroy at least the hinge, if not do damage to the wall frame and the door as well. It is a very effective means by which to eliminate the driving of that pin out, because if you have an exterior door that swings out, I can easily get to the pin. I can try to wrench that off, I can try to drive it out, but that set screw all but eliminates the ability to do that. In the world of commercial hardware, there are additional security measures taken on hinges. Cal Royal does not offer any of them beyond the non-removable pin. Also, a satin chrome hinge. They call it 26D. They could call it 652. The U.S. system was established about 1930, plus or minus, and basically was a government initiative, and I don't know all the facts, but I'm pretty sure it was a government initiative that, with the voluntary participation of hardware manufacturers, all came together and said, let's standardize our finish codes. You could look at a catalog from Corbin, from Russwin, from Yale, from Sargent, from Schlage, from 1910. Well, not Schlage wouldn't be 1910. Schlage would be more like 1925, or Civil War era, and you're going to see these finishes listed in these catalogs that are just a digit or a couple of digits and a letter, and then a long description. The problem with that is the Corbin light bronze oiled relieved didn't match the Yale light bronze oiled relieved, and what manufacturers did was they supplied everything for the house. So you didn't have to worry about finishes mixing and matching and not matching from different manufacturers, but it was clearly a problem, and obviously so much so to the consumer that the government felt this was necessary. I couldn't agree more. I want satin chrome from Cal Royal to match satin chrome from, you know, Schlage. I want that all to match. That's in my best interest. So the U.S. system was brought about, and for sure in the 1932 version of the Sargent catalog that I have shows the U.S. numbers. The US 26D tells me it's satin chrome. What it doesn't tell me is the base material, which is steel. The BHMA, Builders Hardware Manufacturers Association chart tells me that US 26D is satin chrome, but it doesn't tell me the base material. But BHMA, if I called it 652, it would be 26D basically on steel. But if I called it 626, then it's 26D. It's satin chrome on brass. That's the difference. Okay. Speaking of that, template screws are included. They're giving us all wood and all machine screws. That's nice. I can't say that they will do that in all instances. I do like to define to the proper best practice would be to define to the manufacturer the finish, pardon me, the screw arrangement that you want. If you're dealing with a wood door by wood frame, specify all wood screws. Then the onus is on the manufacturer to supply that correctly. I've had people call and say, yeah, I didn't get enough wood screws. What size is the hinge? 6 by 6? Okay. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense because, you know, for the manufacturer to ship out any machine screws or to at least not ask, that's odd. I mean, where are you going to use a 6 by 6 on a hollow metal door and frame? Probably not. Not that it's certainly not impossible, but you're probably not going to. So clarifying that. This is going to be available in all the common finishes, your brass, your bronze, your chrome, your oil rubbed. They can do this size in stainless. They can do this size in heavy weighted as well, which would be 180 thousandths. What I don't love is the logo. I don't like the big corporate advertising on my hinge. Their logo has changed over the years, as has everyone's. I do like them more. I like them a bit more petite. However, I'd like that to be a bit smaller. Cal Royal is a company that should be proud of themselves and display that, you know, prominently on their hardware, but you know, maybe in a more elegant way would be my recommendation. Now, let's take a look and see if we have a cut sheet for this hinge. So a link below this video to the cut sheet. It's not much of a document, except that it does show our hinge and the other part numbers that relate to hinges. BB454. Okay. Different part numbers, different sizes. Does give us the overview of what we're dealing with. Okay. And that's the cut sheet from the manufacturer. And that's linked to down below. Let's wrap up this video. Okay, and finally there is a link below this video to the manufacturer's page where you can pull up not only all of the Cal Royal products that we sell, but also a link to the manufacturer's website, as well as a link to the full product catalog. Cal Royal wants to sell these in box quantities. If we're drop shipping an order to you, we're going to need to observe that. If we're bringing it into our location first, if you needed 4, I'll put 2 on the shelf if I happen to not stock it. But they're going to want these in multiples of 3, so be mindful of that. The link below this video, full catalog, manufacturer's website, and all the Cal Royal products we sell. Cal Royal is a company that certainly deserves credit when it comes to never, in the last 25 years that I've been dealing with them, they have never been idle as it pertains to evolving their product line. Their catalog once upon a time was like this. It's not that anymore. It's a substantially more robust, inclusive catalog of many variants and options. Someone over there is very busy developing their product line. And, you know, I would certainly have to argue that what choice do they have? And what I mean by this is, let's just be honest. I can buy an imported steel hinge from dozens of companies. Why do I select the Cal Royal hinge? Well, maybe they have the other products that you need on the project. Maybe they have other products that you've used that you like. I fit in that category. Maybe it's their customer service and prompt, reliable, predictable shipping lead times, as a rule, that you like. Whatever it is, they can't just place themselves in a position where they're no different than every other importer of low-cost Asian manufactured door hardware. They have to separate themselves from their competition. Good customer service, yeah, they're good. Their inventory is generally really good, and their pricing is good, and they're evolving that product line. Okay, so that would be the reason. You're not buying the hinge from them. You're buying what's behind the hinge, in my opinion. Any questions on the BB454 hinge or any other Cal Royal product? Please feel free to reach out to us. And thank you.